Hello, EduMagicians. Welcome to the EduMagic podcast with your host, Dr. Sam Fessich. Dr. Sam is a professor of education, author of EduMagic, and a pumpkin spice latte fan. This podcast is designed for pre-service teachers. Remember, friends, teaching doesn't begin at graduation, but during that first class at 8 a.m. Let's get this party started.
Hey, I'm Gretchen Bridgers of the Always a Lessons Empowering Educators podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hello, EduMagicians, and welcome back to another episode of the EduMagic podcast. My name is Dr. Sam Fessich, and today I have with me Erin O'Byrne, and she's going to be sharing about the importance of working with students who are English language learners or English as a secondary language or English language. There's so many terms for these learners, but I know that Erin has a special heart to work with these individuals. So we're going to be sharing about some tips and strategies for new teachers and student teachers who are going to be working if you have students like this in your class. So Erin, welcome to the show. I'm excited to have you on.
Hi, Samantha. Lovely to be here. I'm really happy that you invited me.
Yay, I'm excited, but I'm so glad we got it on the books today to record. Before we begin our conversation, can you share a little bit about your teaching story, what brought you into education and what you're doing now?
Oh, so many things. Okay, I've been teaching English for around 18 years or so. I love traveling. I did my third year of university in Germany, studied a bit of German, and then I went traveling when I finished my university. And then when I came home, I really didn't know what to do. So I did what's called a CELTA course, where you learn to teach English to foreigners. So it's teaching English as a foreign language. Now, it would be exclusively for people who are learning English as a second language. So there wouldn't be a mix of native speakers and non-native speakers. So yeah, I did that. And then I went to Poland, and that was my first job. It was more of a why not than a why, just, well, there's an ad, let's go for it. Never been, know nothing about it. Jump on a plane, let's go. Yeah, so I did. And that was really interesting. Poland is a very interesting country. And then I came home, moved to London with my sister, and I started working in South London as an ESOL teacher. Now, ESOL is a bit different because it's government funded, and it's primarily for refugees and asylum seekers, plus anybody else, we had lots of Eastern Europeans as well, just kind of anyone who wants to go on a course to improve their English. So that was most definitely interesting. It definitely had its own set of issues, literacy issues, trauma issues. I had students from Somalia, from Sudan, they brought, you just don't know what's coming through the door with them, if you know what I mean. So that was very interesting. And then I moved to Ireland and I taught there for a while. Then I moved to America, didn't teach there, moved back to England for a couple of years, and I was in academic management. And then I moved back to Ireland. My husband's Irish, and I've been working in the same place for the last 5 years. A bit of academic management, not for me. So I'm a teacher at the moment, teaching young adults, primarily from Japan, but any nationality, really. Yeah.
And are you teaching them online, in person?
At the moment, it's online. I was laid off for a year and then started teaching in March online, and praying that we go back into physical classrooms soon. I don't know about you, but it's not fun teaching online, and my eyes, I'm really having issues with eye strain. So I can't wait to get back to the classroom.
You had mentioned the differences between EFL, ELL. Is there a difference in ESOL? Are those students in a class with just students who are learning language, or are they also working with students who speak English as well?
I think ELL might be exclusively an American term.
Okay.
So I believe
learners.
Yeah, so I believe that would be a mixture of native and non-native speakers. Would that be right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, I work in EFL, English as a foreign language, or some people call it ESL, English as a second language. Some people call it ELT, English language teaching.
Oh, I never heard that one.
I mean, it really just depends. But if you're doing ESOL and it's government funded, that's kind of the one I was talking about. That's very different. But basically EFL, if you work in EFL, you're probably working for a private language school. It's run as a business.
Okay.
And a lot of students come over long-term, short-term, they need visas. They're usually young, not always, but they're usually around university age.
So this episode, we're going to be talking about strategies for future teachers. Now, this can be student teachers, ones that are going in for long-term placements in classrooms, or field students who are going in for a little bit of a shorter term. What are some strategies that you have for our future teachers to work with students who might be under this identification of ESL, EFL, or ELL? Yeah, all the different terms. So we're just going to call it students who are learning English. How about
Yeah. Okay. Oh, where do we start? Okay. Well, I mean, you're not just teaching a language. I think one of the things to remember, and I think this is the most important thing, is you have to use a bit of psychology as a teacher. Students are coming into class with learning barriers. Now, it could be cultural, like the Japanese students I mentioned. They're culturally very shy. They are absolutely terrified of making mistakes. So they won't speak. So you have to build their confidence and you have to earn their trust and you have to build a relationship with them and with each other as well. There could be other learning barriers. You could have a student who had a terrible experience with another language teacher. So there's that block there.
Right.
But I mean, basically, if you're boiling it down, the majority of reasons why students won't speak, because sometimes it's not that they can't, it's they won't, because they have some kind of fear or insecurity. So that's what you should be focusing on. And like the 2 or 3 main components are trust, communication, building a relationship, and building community within the classroom. And then and also you have to remember that everything is a process, not just the learning of the language, but this building of the trust and building like this, fostering this environment you need. It's a process. It will take time and you need to be patient. And some students will come out of their shell, in a quicker time than others. And you have to exercise patience with the other ones. And then the ones who do come out of their shell or who are already quite kind of outgoing and willing to talk, think about what you can do with them. Can you give them a leadership role so that they're not dominating?
Yeah.
Making use of that. I think that's quite useful as well. So to do that, you have to furnish students with a lot of phrases. You have to furnish them with phrases to communicate with each other. So like when they're checking work, I don't understand. What's this? Can you help me with this? You have to furnish them with phrases to communicate with you. And that's kind of the starting point for me. Give them lots and lots of lexical phrases to communicate in a very simple way.
And you know what? Those are great strategies for any learner, but especially for our students who are learning English. We start with building those relationships. You had mentioned that it's more than just the language, the communication back and forth, it's the culture. What are some ways that you can work to teach about the culture to students who are learning English?
You mean like teach my culture to them or just learn about everybody's culture?
Yeah, learn about everyone's culture in that classroom, especially if it's a mixed ability group, a mixed language group, and like celebrating that. Like we are all uniquely made and we're all from different places, and let's share about that.
Yeah. Just initiating conversations where they have to share something and find commonalities, finding common ground, because like you could have a student from, somewhere in Asia and a student from somewhere from South America, and personality wise, they couldn't be more different. But if you get them to find common ground, there's always things like food, music. There's so many things you can talk about where students can meet in the middle or share something or talk about something from their culture. There's loads of different ways you can do that. Just initiate those conversations and give students the space to tell their stories and share them.
I agree. I think music and food are great pieces to start with because we all have favorites. We all have opinions about that. You had mentioned that many of the ESOL teachers are young and out of university. What are some ways, if we have some listeners like, oh, you know what, I think I want to do that when I graduate. What are some ways that they can get started, just kind of dipping their toe in the water or exploring some different resources to help them gain that type of experience or that type of first teaching?
You have to do a course called CELTA, CELTA. That's by Cambridge. And there's another one called TESOL, TESOL, which is exactly the same. They're a month-long course where you kind of learn the basics and then you're qualified basically, but you're not really. Yeah, I mean, that's your starting point. But I mean, there are so many language schools. A lot of new teachers start with summer schools because like summer is actually the busiest time. We don't get summer holidays because we're private. It's a private language school. So, you know, when everyone else is on holiday, that's when they come over and do their language courses. So there are millions of summer schools in every English speaking country. It's usually about 6 weeks long. It's a baptism of fire, to be sure, because it's chaos, absolute chaos. But that's a good place to start because no one's really like going to be checking on you that much. You know, you can make mistakes.
Yeah.
That's where you can make your mistakes and come up with your ideas and meet some new teachers and learn about different places to work and get some advice and, you know, talk about maybe the countries you might want to work in. Because the beauty part of this course, this CELTA or this TESOL course, is it qualifies you to work anywhere in the world.
Nice.
And that doesn't mean every language school in the world is a good one. But basically, if you have those qualifications, you can teach anywhere in the world. So if you decide, you know what, I think I'm going to go to Spain for a year, go to Spain for a year.
Just like you just go to Poland for, you know, just because why not? Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Exactly. So if you have the traveling bug, it's perfect for you because it's one of those jobs where you can chop and change. You know, you usually only have to give in a couple of weeks notice and you can go somewhere else. But I would advise, obviously, start applying around Easter. Don't leave it any later than that because otherwise all the spaces will be taken up.
Good to know. Thank you. And I'll make sure I put those links to those certification pieces in the show notes as well. Now, Erin, what are some of your go-to resources that you are using with your students to help them learn English? What are some strategies? What are some go-to places or resources that you recommend our new teachers checking?
If they are able to communicate together, Jamboard for online learning at the moment. Love Jamboard. I haven't been able to use it in the last few weeks because my students have been like extremely it's been a battle getting them to talk. So it doesn't work with them. Something like Wheel Decide. Have you heard of that one? Wheel,
No,
as
I
in like
haven't.
a wheel on a car, Wheel Decide. It's one of those things where you put in questions and then you click on it and a wheel spins and they can discuss the questions. That's nice.
Fun.
Oh, there's so many. I mean, this is the thing. There are a million different websites. I do tend to create a lot of my own materials, so purely because, and this is like the one gripe I will have with the qualification is that it doesn't really teach you how to teach language because, like, here's the grammar rules. Let's do an exercise. Let's do some speaking. You know, you don't learn language that way. You pick it up through context. So. Yeah. I actually adapt a lot of the stuff to my own kind of teaching method, which is the lexical approach. So rather than, you know, here are the grammar rules, here are the exercises, I'll take a few phrases with one grammar point in them. For example, if you're doing the present continuous, instead of just having a list of like, I am riding a horse, she is talking to her friend, have a sentence like, I'm just coming, I'll be there in a minute. Or I'm reading a great book at the moment, you know, and actually put it in the context with the verbs that you're going to actually be using with that grammar point and put them in a dialogue. So put them in context and try not to go to the rules too much. But I mean, I would say that if people are interested in the lexical approach, again, go on YouTube, watch some videos, learn about it, listen to my podcast. I've got some episodes on it.
We're going to talk about that.
Yep.
I love it. And I was thinking, you know, as you're sharing, like there are just so many tools that you can use.
Yeah.
Have you used Flipgrid at all to help students with conversation and connecting back and forth in that way?
I signed up to it and then I forgot about it.
I was just thinking like that would be a neat one for them to practice their language. But I too have an obsession with Jamboard. Oh my goodness, Jamboard, fantastic tool. So Erin, I know that my listeners, I know I have some out there that are listening like, okay, I want to get started with my ESOL test. I want to travel and I want to teach English around the world. So I know that you are an expert in this field. So could you please share what are some ways my listeners can connect with you, check out and listen and subscribe to your podcast as well, and just find you online and follow your work?
Okay, so let's start with Instagram. Everything EFL pod. Facebook would be Everything EFL podcast. LinkedIn, I'm under Erin O'Byrne. My podcast is called Everything EFL. It's my passion. I actually had a podcast partner for the first 31 episodes. It was a bit of a hot mess, if the truth be told. So start from episode 32, guys. And that's me. But it's something I'm really, really proud of and I'm really passionate about. And I talk about everything from unleashing your creative beast to how to teach lexically, to building your students' confidence, using songs in the classroom, anything and everything.
This has been great. I love how we talked about what are the differences between EFL, ESL, ELL for our friends in the US. We talked about ESOL specific schools and how those are funded. We talked about some resources. Of course, we got to talk about resources to help support our students. And I love how your strategy at the beginning was go back to those basics, build those relationships between and with your students. And that's just a best practice for all of our students. And I really enjoyed listening to the strategy of give them some phrases to use so they can ask for help, so they can get the support that they need. And in a way that we talk, right? Because we don't always say, I am going to ride the horse today. I'm going to ride a horse today, So I'm big into pronunciation. I absolutely adore pronunciation, and I'm all about spoken pronunciation. And that would be my other bit of advice as well. Like, do your research and hammer them with pronunciation, incorporate it into every single lesson if you can. Again, my podcast has a couple of episodes about that if you need some help, but pronunciation is just as important because you'll find that a lot of students have very little confidence when it comes to that. Also, it helps with their listening skills as well. Mm-hmm. If you teach them the contractions and you teach them, instead of teaching individual words, teach them phrases and then let them listen to those phrases as they are spoken so that they recognize them when they're going to listen to them. Stuff like that, just pronunciation is just as important as the language itself, I would say. Absolutely. And I love how you shared about using language in context.
Yes.
That's also very critical for our English language learners. Erin, this has been such a fun conversation. And if you could send me the links to the episodes that specifically talk about those strategies, I'll make sure I pop them in our show notes, in addition to the link to your podcast and the link to your Instagram and Facebook, along with LinkedIn. Thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
There you have it, EduMagicians. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with your friends. For more EduMagic, check out sfessage.com and follow Dr. Sam on Twitter and Instagram @sfessage. Until next time, you have the EduMagic within you.